Hey y'all, I want to talk about some of the things that's really destroying the body of Yeshua today, um, whom you may call Jesus. Um, some things that are tearing the assembly apart today, as far as sin. There's a lot of doctrines inside the church today that are not biblically correct, that the church has accepted, and it has allowed sin to grow within the body of the Messiah. All right, and as a result, people are dying in their sins. There are so many destructive doctrines inside the church today that are not being criticized or called out, that's allowing sin to grow within the church. And like I said, as a result, people are dying in their sins. And it seems to be that no one realizes it. People are literally out here dying from their sins, in their sins, and the church cannot recognize it. People think that people are just out here just dying because they just had a heart attack, or because they had a disease, or because the doctors couldn't find what's wrong with them. One thing that amazes me is that there's a lack of discernment today in the church. How do I know this? Because I'm around church people every day. I listen to them talk. I listen to what their conversations are about. I listen to how they solve problems. Right? I listen to their problem-solving skills, the way that they judge, the way that they discern situations, especially spiritually, their response to trouble. Right? Whenever trouble hits, whenever the Bible, whenever like real spiritual attacks happen, their reactions to these things tells me that their discernment is significantly off. They lack discernment. All right, the church lacks discernment, and that's one of the main things that's in itself is wrong with the church today. There's a huge lack of discernment today in the body of Messiah. All right, for those who don't know what it means to discern, the definition of discern means your ability to judge well, right? So if you have good discernment, that means you have a good judgment. You know how to discern between good and evil, right? You can tell whether someone is speaking from God or not. You can tell whether someone is really from him. You can recognize a false prophet as soon as they begin to teach, right? But the church does not have that discernment today. And this is one of the main things wrong with the body today. They lack discernment. A false teacher can walk into the house of God, well, it's supposed to be the house of God, and literally tell lies, and the congregation does not have the ability to discern whether this is from God or not. All right, now there's multiple reasons for this lack of discernment. All right, the lack of discernment is not credited to false teachers, but it's credited to followers, because the reason that you lack discernment is because you're not truly seeking God. All right, if you were truly seeking him, then he would give you the wisdom and understanding to know what is from him and what is not. All right, whenever you act like you're seeking God and you go to church and you do all these religious activities, you act like you're seeking him, but you're really not. He's going to partially blind you. All right, this is why there is a lack of discernment today in the body of the Messiah. There's many reasons why there's a lack of discernment today. Selfishness, pride, but one of the main reasons is because people are not truly seeking Yahuwah. They're not truly seeking the word of God. They don't want to really hear the word of God. They want to go to church, and pay their tithes so they can do whatever they want to do for the rest of the week. They done their job. I went to church. I got good church attendance. This is what they want to do. But they don't really want to live for the Father, because they would have to die to themselves. They would have to be selfless. They would have to serve. They would have to love others. They would have to give up their lives. People don't truly want to do this. They say that they love God with their mouths, but their hearts are far from him. This is one of the problems with the church today. There is a lack of discernment in the church today, and it is allowing sin to grow in the body, and people are dying in their sins. All right. Another thing, I made a list of some of the things that is causing destruction in the church today. The do not judge doctrine. This do not judge doctrine is just ripping the body apart. The ideal of the assembly today is supposed to resemble the assembly of Israel. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but what the assembly is supposed to be is supposed to resemble the assembly of Israel. Israel, they were an assembly, right? They had laws that kept them from sin, or was supposed to make them righteous and reduce the amount of sin, right? Anytime sin was beginning to grow within that assembly of Israel, they would purge it. right? They would kill the sin. This is why you see in the Old Testament Yah striking people down, him opening up the earth and killing rebellious people. Some days 3,000 people fell among the assembly of Israel because of their disobedience. This was Yah removing the evil from the assembly of Israel. All right. This is what the assembly is supposed to resemble today. All right. We're supposed to purge the evil from among us. You'll see examples of this in the New Testament also. Whenever the church first started, I can't remember the couple's name. I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but they lied. They sold all their belongings, and they were supposed to, whenever the church was first forming, they act like they did something that they didn't because they wanted to receive credit. They wanted to receive glory, and they thought that they could hide this from the disciples, but the Spirit of God knew, right? So as a result, this husband and this wife lost their lives because they lied. And the reason that Yah did this, because this was the beginning of the foundations of the church, right? He wanted to set an example that this is not going to be tolerated, all right? He killed these people at the foundation of the church to let people know that this is not going to be tolerated, all right? This is an example of purging the evil from among us, all right? Now, we cannot purge the evil from among us today because we are under this satanic do not judge doctrine. The way that the do not judge doctrine is used today is not the same way that it is taught to us in the Bible. All right. Today, when people use the do not judge doctrine, they're doing that to deflect taking responsibility for their wickedness. Right. We're supposed to purge the evil from among us. Right. You don't just walk up to people and call them out, especially not in front of people. Right. You don't do that. All right. But we're not supposed to allow sin to grow within the body of the Messiah, all right? Because one area of weakness affects the overall body, right? So if you allow sin to grow over here, you can't expect it to not influence you or not influence the whole body. And since this do not judge doctrine has allowed sin to grow in one area, the whole body is weak. The whole entire body is weak because the whole entire body is accepting it. All right. We can only be as strong as our weakest links. You can only be as strong as the weakest part of the body. If the weakest part of the body is where sin is growing at, then sin is going to grow in the whole church. All right. So in the Bible, Paul told us that we are supposed to judge. We don't judge the outside of the church. Right. We don't judge those who are on the outside. In Paul's words, I'm quoting him, he says that God will judge them. If they have not accepted Yeshua into their life, they're not bound by the same laws that we are. So you can't apply our laws or the laws of the Bible to them because they don't follow our laws, right? God's going to judge them. But as far as the inside of the body, we do judge them, all right? We judge the inside of the assembly, purge the evil from among us. Right? If you have a friend or a brother or something that's living a life that's not holy, that's living a life that's not pleasing to God, like I said, you don't have to call them out, but you may pull them to the side or something. Like Paul said, like Yeshua said, if your brother has offended you, pull him to the side, tell him if he's not listening to you, tell the elders, tell the assembly. If he doesn't listen to them, then it's really nothing you can do about it, right? But we're not supposed to allow sin to grow like we are today. This do not judge doctrine, Satan has taken advantage of it, and it's one of his easiest ways to access the body of the Messiah today and allow sin to grow into the body. All right. In the Bible, whenever Yeshua was saying, do not judge, or you shall be judged like you judged others, he wasn't talking about it in the same way that we talk about it today. He said, before you judge others, take the log out of your eye so that you may be able to see the speck in your brother's eye. And notice he said log. That means the log in your eye is bigger than a speck, right? You cannot see the speck, which is smaller than a log. You cannot see what's wrong with someone else until you take the log out of your eye. After you take the log out of your eye, then you can see what's wrong with others. All right. He didn't say don't ever judge. He said you cannot judge someone for what you're doing. So after you have your stuff together, this doesn't mean that you have to be 100% perfect and 100% sinless to judge. That's not what he's saying. He's just saying don't try to criticize other people for doing the same thing that you're doing. because you will be held accountable for that. All right, that's what the Bible means by judging. You cannot judge other people for doing the same things that you're doing. You cannot judge other people whenever you're not living a life that's holy to God. That's what the Bible means by not judging. The Bible doesn't mean do not judge as far as don't say anything about sin and just allow it to grow. All right, so this do not judge doctrine is one of the primary destructive doctrines in the body today that has allowed sin to grow. And as a result, people are dying in their sins because they think that no one is supposed to say anything about their sins to them. So whenever God tries to speak to them, or he sends someone to them to warn them to turn away, they think that you're not supposed to judge, so they reject the voice of God. All right, Satan has done a number on the body with this do not judge doctrine. But like I said, this all goes back to whether you're really seeking him or not. Because if you truly seeking the Father, you ain't gonna be deceived. All right, he's not gonna allow you to be deceived. The only people who are truly deceived are people who are not truly seeking him. As a result, he has blinded them. All right, another thing that has caused sin to grow in the church today is the rejection of the Old Testament. Christians despise the Old Testament. They hate it. They may not say it with their mouths. They may not say it, but you let them talk long enough, they will tell you. Christians tell me all the time, we don't have to listen to the Old Testament. We don't have to follow the Old Testament. That's the old covenant. We don't have to read that no more. A lot of them are not bold enough to just say it out like that. But like I said, you let them talk long enough, they will. If you let them defend their faith, it's going to be a lot of rejection of the Old Testament in their speech, right? So the rejection of the Old Testament is also one of the reasons why there is a lack of discernment in the body today. Christians, people don't know God because they're not rightly dividing his word, right? So I got a Bible right here. All right, I'm gonna show y'all something real quick. All right, this is Matthew right here, the beginning of the New Testament, the New Covenant. This is the New Testament right here. This is the New Testament. This is the Old Testament right here. So whenever you reject the Old Testament, this is what you're missing out on. And I know a lot of times it's hard to read the Old Testament because you got all the laws and stuff in there, you know, Deuteronomy, Numbers, Leviticus, Exodus, and all that stuff. It's kind of hard to read that stuff. But whenever you skip out on that stuff, you're missing history and you're missing spiritual discernment. All right. Whenever you read those things, you're going to learn who the Father is, the God who you're supposed to be worshiping. You'll learn about him intimately, what he disapproves of, what he enjoys, what kind of lifestyle he wants you to live. So rejection of the Old Testament is one of the reasons that sin has allowed, the rejection of the Old Testament is one of the reasons that sin has been allowed to grow in the body today. But there's some kind of form of lawlessness in Christianity today. Now, I can go down a rabbit hole talking about the lawlessness of Christianity today, but I'm trying not to get too far off subject. But rejection of the Old Testament has led to a lot of lawlessness today in the body of the Messiah. All right, people have rejected the Old Testament. They believe we don't have to follow those laws. We don't have to do those things anymore. All you have to do is love your neighbor. This is an immature spiritual baby doctrine that's going to cause you to get rejected by God. You have to understand one thing. Whenever you want to live a life of sin, your flesh is going to convince you of all kind of absurd things. All right. Whenever you want to commit a certain sin, your mind is going to tell you that that part in the Bible does not apply to you. The reason that you feel that way is because you want to sin. All right. Whenever you want to sin, you're going to find some part in the Bible that has everything to do with what you want to do. And you're going to say that doesn't apply to me, or something that's not real. The enemy is going to try to convince you that that part of the Bible is not real or something, just so you can remove that boundary and be lawless. All right. This is why Christians reject the Old Testament today, because it allows them to live a lawless life. This is why people celebrate Christmas. This is why people celebrate Easter, all these pagan holidays and all this pagan activity in the body today. One of the main reasons for that is because of the rejection of the Old Testament. If you read the Old Testament, you'll learn who the Father is and what he expects from us. He says, I am your God, I am holy, and I expect you to be holy. He doesn't want us to do what the other nations do, right? Do not be like the other nations, all right? The other nations, they worship the sun, the moon, the stars, the sky. They worship the clouds. They worship the planets. They worship the earth. They worship the trees. But we don't do that, all right? Because he told us to not be like the other nations. And one thing you'll notice about Christianity today is it significantly resembles Greek Hellenization, all right? And the reason why is because of their rejection of the Old Testament. And my last point is belief in Jesus. Pastors are out here teaching people all you have to do is believe and you're saved. All right. This may be a good doctrine to teach 9 or 10-year-olds, but eventually you're going to have to grow up. All right. Eventually you're going to have to mature. All right. Paul told us to leave these doctrines behind and go on to spiritual maturity. All right. You cannot stay in the same doctrines that you stayed in when you were 9, 10, or 11 years old. All right. Christians today, I know exactly how they feel because I used to feel that way. How much sin can I get away with? I used to think about this when I was a child in church, like 10, 12, 13 years old. How much sin can I get away with? All I have to do is believe and then I'm saved? Am I really saved? How much sin, like how much forgiveness can I receive? These thoughts used to go through my head. So I know what Christians feel, because Christians, they still act the same way that I thought when I was an adolescent. This means that they are spiritually immature. This means that they stopped growing. The things that come out of their mouths are the same things that came out of my mouth when I was a child. All right. Your faith in the way you conduct yourself should not resemble a child. This means that you are spiritually immature. You may be mature in this world. You may be a big dog in this world. You may be doing your thing in this world, but that doesn't matter. I'm talking about spirituality. You have to grow up. All right. All you have to do is believe in Jesus to go to heaven is a destructive doctrine that is causing people to die in their sins, right? Because these pastors who went to theology school and got their authority, people look up to them, right? People look up to them highly, and they respect their word, you know? So whatever comes out of these pastors' mouths, the congregation really takes it serious. So you tell people all that they have to do is believe and they're saved. That's all that they gonna do, right? And people like me try to come and tell you that you got to do more than that. Well, my pastor said all I got to do is believe. You see how destructive these doctrines are? And these leaders, they're going to pay. But like I said, the leaders are not the ones that's going to be held accountable, because no one could lead someone astray that's truly seeking God, right? But the reason that I'm making this video, y'all, I'm trying to make it not too long, is because there's many destructive doctrines in the body today that are causing people to die in their sins. I have personally, like around me, recently seen people die in their sins. People that's going to church, right? And the reason that people, like, nobody's talking about it, right? Nobody's calling it out. Nobody seems to see what's going on. These people are dying. No one is talking about Yah. No one is talking about the Father. No one is talking about the Bible. These people just die, and then people just, you know, they never learn from people's deaths. They never get better. No one is growing. No one is acknowledging Yahuwah's hand in our lives. They're not realizing that he's striking people down. They're not realizing that he's judging the world. No one is saying anything about it. People are blaming the doctors. Well, the doctors couldn't fix them. The doctors, it's not the doctors. Y'all got to open up your eyes and y'all got to read the word of God. You know, this is one of the reasons I have separated myself away from Christianity, because there is such a lack of discernment that I cannot be associated with. You have to acknowledge Yah's hand in our lives. You have to acknowledge his hand in your life, all right? He's striking people down in their sins. You have to wake up, all right? You have to wake up. You don't just have to believe in Jesus to go to heaven. You have to live an obedient, holy life to the Father, all right? You have to fulfill his will for your life. Yeshua said, not everyone who calls on me will enter into the kingdom of heaven, but those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. Did your pastor tell you that? Did your pastor tell you that not everyone who calls on Jesus is going to heaven, but only those who do the will of his Father? I didn't say that. The Messiah that you so-called so much love and believe, he said that. Not everyone who calls on him is going to enter into his kingdom, but only those doing his will. All right? So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself this question. Am I fulfilling the will of the Father for my life? Are you living a life that's pleasing to him? You'll know it. I'm going to tell you how you can know. I'm going to tell you how you can know. Yeshua said, if your heart condemns you, then God is going to condemn you. Because God is greater than your heart. He knows more than your heart. So if you don't have confidence in your heart concerning your relationship with God, then that means you need to take action. Because if your heart does not feel confident in your relationship with God, then God is greater than your heart. He's going to condemn you. If your heart condemns you, then God is going to condemn you. That is how you measure your relationship with the Father to see where you're at. If you don't feel confident and if you don't feel like you can stand before the Father, then you can't. Because if you could stand in front of him, you'll feel it in your heart. You'll feel it in your heart. So you're still living today. You have a chance to turn away from sin. Stop wasting all this time and just doing whatever you want to, regardless of how many chances he give you. All these people out here dying, he's doing this to wake you up. All right? He's doing this so that you may have another chance. The reason that you had that hard time or that heart attack or whatever happened in your life recently, the reason that you went through that was a wake-up call. All right? A wake-up call. All right? Y'all be blessed out there.